spent 10 years protecting the Jedi. This is my chance to return that favor.
Disney Plus's Obi-Wan Kenobi-centric Star Wars spin-off series gave us a lot of unforgettable moments filled with fan service and sentimental scenes that will go down as some of the best in the history of the sci-fi franchise. There's no denying the fact that Kenobi hit some praiseworthy highs, and as such, here are just 10 of our picks for the best moments from the show. So without further ado, let's jump right into it, starting off with a return to the light side. Taking time to reintroduce everyone's favorite ex-Jedi during his self-imposed isolation on Tatooine was undoubtedly a great creative choice. The story starts off by giving us a look at the broken hero, blaming himself for everything that had happened 10 years ago, wasting away in the desert as a former warrior of peace and justice for the Republic. However, once push comes to shove, and he realizes that he's the only one capable of saving Leia and helping make some amends to make up for his past mistake, the Jedi suits up, digs out his buried lightsaber, and embarks on a journey to save the young princess.
I will do what I must.
When we saw Obi-Wan board a ship to leave Tatooine, and the camera panned down to show him wearing his iconic lightsaber, we couldn't help but feel chills running down our nerdy spines. Up next is Obi-Wan learning the truth. Sure enough, as if there was any doubt about it to begin with, Obi-Wan finds and saves Leia, only to then realize that this had all just been an elaborate plan set up by the Inquisitors in order to lure him out of hiding and into a trap. However, Obi-Wan still outsmarts them with a little help from a fellow light side believer, but not before he learns the truth about his former student Anakin. This was the moment where the old Jedi Master realizes that his Padawan is still alive.
You must leave.
And then, the show cuts to Hayden Christensen's Darth Vader submerged in a Bacta tank, looking as menacing as ever in all his dark side glory. It just doesn't get any better than this. Following up is Anakin and Obi-Wan's reunion. While the execution certainly lacked a bit of subtlety, watching Obi-Wan face off against Anakin in just the third episode was yet another great way to hype up the eventual final battle. Despite probably never being able to be the same great warrior he used to be, Obi-Wan still must take on both his demons and the full force of Darth Vader's terrifying machine-line villainy. Once the Dark Lord emerges from his shuttle and starts absolutely destroying the townsfolk, Obi-Wan has no choice but to run away, realizing that Anakin was no longer the Padawan he once knew. However, using his mastery of the Force, Vader seeks his adversary, and suddenly appears right in front of him, with a duel seeming all but inevitable. Obi-Wan struggles to keep up with the Sith Lord in this fight, even with Vader clearly holding back his full power, perhaps thinking that defeating his former senior in such a weak state wouldn't give him the satisfaction that he'd been savoring for the last 10 years.
Yes, I had some parts stolen. I need a new processor.
At lucky number 7, we have Obi-Wan using the Force. If the Inquisitors had been just a little more competent at their jobs, every Jedi, including the titular one, would have been found and eliminated ages ago. However, Obi-Wan clearly has a bit more experience when it comes to the combat part of the Force, so he gets to flex his Jedi muscles in a much better way. This is the same episode as the events we saw in Jedi Fallen Order, where the main characters broke into the Inquisitors' main facility and located Princess Leia. Seeing Obi-Wan make his way through a small army of stormtroopers and keeping them at bay is certainly a moment that reminded every Star Wars fan that this was the man who managed to single-handedly defeat the Chosen One himself using his mastery of the Force. On the other hand, this scene also planted a subtle question in our minds. How would this old Jedi fare against Vader, a being certainly more experienced, if not more powerful than Anakin because of his physical limitations? Moving on, there's Anakin and Obi-Wan's training sequence. Casting Hayden Christensen as the Dark Lord himself was a surprise decision, but a welcome one at that. No one saw it coming, or could see the point of it either, since it didn't matter who was going to portray the menacing villain underneath all those layers of leather and machinery. Of course, this led to a lot of fans assuming that we would be getting some flashback sequences to a time when Anakin was still, well, Anakin. And sure enough, lo and behold, the show didn't disappoint with those fan service moments.
Life than your farm, Owen. He needs to see that. There's a whole galaxy.
In an extensive action sequence, we get to see a younger Obi-Wan and Anakin practicing their sword fighting in the Jedi Temple. Anakin attacks Obi-Wan with a typical aggressive style that he's known for, a weakness that the latter then uses against his Padawan in order to gain the upper hand in the duel. "You're a great warrior, Anakin," he tells Anakin after disarming the youngster, "but your need to prove yourself is your undoing. Until you overcome it, a Padawan you will still be." Looks like he really took those words to heart, as we all know how Anakin ends up. At the halfway point of this list, we have Darth Vader stopping a transport ship. Do you know how everyone keeps talking about how Anakin was the strongest being in all of Star Wars? Well, it's true. After all, he is the child of prophecy, the chosen one of the living Force, the man who is even stronger than Master Yoda himself in just his early youth. The extended lore has already demonstrated that fact to some extent. However, despite his many live-action appearances, we have yet to see the full extent of Vader's beastish strength. In the penultimate episode of the series, the villain effortlessly stops a transport ship mid-flight at full thrust using just the Force with just one hand. He then goes on to bring it down and rip the frame of the ship apart without even batting an eyelid. If we don't count his iconic Rogue One hallway scene, this is probably the most badass thing that we've ever seen the Sith Lord do. Coming up next is the final confrontation between Anakin and Obi-Wan. Anakin's eventual rematch with his former master naturally meant that everyone would be going into the series, counting every minute of runtime until the moment the two would square off against one another. Having faced and conquered his demons, Obi-Wan awaits his rival on a dry and rocky planet, the complete opposite of their last face-off, while similar enough to get our blood pumping. With both characters being 10 years older, and Vader fully decked out in his menacing suit, it was going to be difficult to replicate the following dance-like choreography that we had seen in Revenge of the Sith. However, Lucasfilm gave us a performance that couldn't have been any more breathtaking to behold, as the two fighters moved from stance to stance and flaunted the full extent of their Force abilities in order to gain the upper hand. Expectations were certainly high, but we can proudly say that the folks over at Lucasfilm did not disappoint. Obi-Wan's apology also finds his way onto the list. At the end of the blood-pumping duel, Obi-Wan overpowers Anakin, breaking apart his breathing apparatus and even cutting off a chunk of his helmet, just as Ahsoka had done in Star Wars Rebels. Instead of Vader's iconic machine-like voice, we hear Anakin taunt the Jedi Master by saying, "Anakin is gone, I am what remains," causing Obi-Wan to break down, something that no one could have expected to see from this fight going in. "I'm sorry," the Jedi responds. "I'm sorry, Anakin, for all of it." We'd also like to imagine that what Anakin said next, "I'm not your failure, Obi-Wan," is his old friend using a short moment of clarity in order to reach out and help him move past his guilt before Darth Vader takes over once again. The penultimate entry on our list is, "Hello there." Was there any doubt this was going to make it onto the list? Obi-Wan's iconic catchphrase has become a timeless meme, and as such, it was only natural that most fans would want to hear him say it again at least once during Kenobi. When all hope seemed to be lost, the producers revealed that they had kept the best highlight of the show for last by including it in the scene where Obi-Wan meets a young Luke Skywalker for the very first time. And finally, we have Obi-Wan reuniting with Qui-Gon after 23 years. Nobody knows what George Lucas had wanted to accomplish after revealing that Qui-Gon's Force Ghost had reached out to Master Yoda in Revenge of the Sith, and that, in time, Obi-Wan would also learn how to communicate with his old master as well. The plot point was never touched on again, leading many fans speculating that the series might finally address this mystery, and the show decided to wrap up by bringing back Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon Jinn, the perfect way to wrap up the series. That's a wrap for this video. What was your favorite moment from the Obi-Wan Kenobi series? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this.